Hey, creative souls, writers, word witches, thank you so much for tuning in. I am so happy that you're here. In this video, I will be talking about the writing habits and practices of Kurt Vonnegut. For those of you who don't know me, you can visit my website at johnnymazzacco.com or check out my video called On Being a Word Witch. I also want to mention my new offering of a 1-month free trial period for the Alchemy of Writing membership group. It's a small group right now, and I would love to see it grow. I do understand that committing to 6 months is a lot if you don't know what's inside. So I figured why not offer 1 month for free so you can give it a try and see for yourself. I'd really love to see you there, and I would love to see you become part of my quiet but powerful movement to heal the world through story. There's a link in the description to learn more and to register. Okay, on to the writing habits and practices of Kurt Vonnegut. He's an American author known for his satire that blends dark humor, social commentary, and science fiction. His storylines combine dystopian fiction and fantasy. He was influenced by a variety of work, from pulp fiction, science fiction, fantasy, and action adventure in his younger years, as well as the classics. Specific authors who influenced Vonnegut were George Orwell, Robert Louis Stevenson, H.G. Wells, Henry David Thoreau, and Jonathan Swift. His writing was also influenced by his lived experience, which included being a prisoner of war during World War II. A short list of his novels includes Slaughterhousefive, Catscradle, and Breakfast of Champions. He also published a long list of short story collections. I also want to mention a video on YouTube that is an excerpt from a talk that he gave on story shapes. I believe I can connect it here, so you should see it up above. If not, I will put it in the description also, so you can link to that. It's fun, it's humorous, and I use it when I teach to give people kind of an introductory idea of how stories work, how frameworks for stories work. So for this conversation today, I want to read to you an excerpt from a letter that he wrote to his wife, Jane. And he wrote this in 1965 while he was teaching at Iowa Writers Workshop, and his family stayed behind in Cape Cod. I got this excerpt from an article in The Atlantic by Maria Popova, and I will put a link in the description to that as well. This is what he wrote. In an unmoored life like mine, sleep and hunger and work arrange themselves to suit themselves, without consulting me. I am just as glad that they haven't consulted me about the tiresome details. What they have worked out is this. I awake at 5:30, work until 8, eat breakfast at home, work until 10, walk a few blocks into town, do errands, go to the nearby municipal swimming pool, which I have all to myself, and swim for half an hour. Return home at 11:45, read the mail, eat lunch at noon. In the afternoon, I do schoolwork, either teach or prepare. And when I get home from school at around 5:30, I numb my twanging intellect with several belts of scotch and water. In parentheses, $5 per fifth at the state liquor store, the only liquor store in town. There are loads of bars though. Cook supper, read and listen to jazz, lots of good music on the radio here, slip off to sleep at 10. So we can see similarities with other practices that we've looked at in the past. The waking early and immediately starting to write. This seems to be a standard practice from well-known authors who have spoken about their writing habits and practices. And it varies anywhere from 4 to 6 a.m. There's also walking. Walking is a component of many, many practices. As I've mentioned in other videos, there is science behind the correlation between ambulation and writing and the creative mind. There oftentimes is other physical activity involved in a writing practice, and Vonnegut mentions swimming in particular. Murakami also talked about this, about how important swimming is to his practice, especially when he's in novel writing mode. And for some, there's the habit of a nip of some kind of alcohol. And in fact, if you know about the lives of writers, many have said that alcoholism is an occupational hazard for writers. And not to say that Vonnegut was an alcoholic. I don't believe I've ever read that. But there is this habit of alcohol to kind of either relax the mind to write or to relax at the end of the day, to calm the mind. And I think the thing that always stands out is the routine, right? It's the repetition. So the repeating of the same habits over and over in the same order day in and day out. And I think this is really essential to a solid writing practice. And the more I learn about my own neurodivergent brain, I think it's even more essential for those of us who live with this special brain wiring to achieve a kind of rhythm. And you know that those of us who have this brain wiring, once we fall into a rhythm, oh my goodness, we are in it. We are deep in it. And for me anyway, it's kind of this magic can kind of happen when I strike that balance. Otherwise, we can just spin out into the stratosphere because our fractal-like minds tend to kind of veer away and think about other things and can really take us away from our practices. And when we do this, then comes the frustration, sometimes guilt, disillusionment, and whatever else we tell ourselves when we don't find that discipline and write. So it really behooves us, neurodivergent or not, to find that rhythm and fine-tune it like we're fine-tuning an instrument to play the perfect pitch. It's those grooves of recognition that we wear in our brain so that it knows when it's time to fall into writing mode. It's almost like when our brain knows when it gets used to this rhythm we've created, as soon as our butt hits the chair, the brain says, okay, I'm going to write now. And sometimes this comes after, not just a regular daily routine, but also a ritual around the writing itself. So that might mean making coffee or tea. It might mean lighting a candle. It might mean getting a particular notebook and writing utensil. If you write by hand, it might mean turning on certain lights, turning off certain lights. For some people, it means turning on a certain kind of music. So I'm curious, have you found your rhythm? And do you have a consistent writing practice? And if not, or even if you do, why not join us for the 30-day Writing Life Morning Challenge? It starts April 1st and it runs through April 30th, but you can start it anytime. So if you see this after April 1st or after April, please don't let that stop you from coming along for the ride. I started this challenge for myself and I figured I'd invite you all to do it with me. And you can use the list that I've made or you can create your own. The idea is to create something or really solidify a practice, a routine that works for you. There's a link in the description to a downloadable, fillable PDF, so I hope to see you there. As always, sending you mad writing mojo. Happy writing!